with Bass Musician Magazine. Today I have Matt Geraghty with us. I've been a huge fan of Matt Geraghty's work for many years now, and I discovered you through a friend while I was teaching at a music store. He introduced me to one of your albums called Passports, and since then I've been a huge fan and I've been following your work. And let's dive into some of what you're doing these days.
Thanks. First of all, Steve, really appreciate the invitation and the chat. Right now I'm in San Juan, just got here today, and we're continuing our documentary music series called Just Play. So that's kind of been my focus for the past few months during this pandemic time. And essentially we're creating a documentary that features female Afro-Puerto Rican artists and the styles of bomba, the styles of the West Coast of Puerto Rico. And essentially we're doing interviews and musical collaborations with these artists and giving a platform for their voices, and to bring visibility to these artists, which are like hidden treasures of Puerto Rico. So that's what we have at the moment that we're working on, and a lot of other things also in the cooker.
That's awesome. You know, your album has always been very like everything you put out is very laced with world music, and that's one of the things I love is that you kind of you're tying cultures together, and you're creating this hybrid of just these amazing sounds, and there's that jazz element, and then there's this world element that I love, and it caught my ear almost immediately. How did you find yourself getting into that medley, that blend of just these beautiful sounds?
It all happened when I lived in Spain for a year, and I was in Sevilla getting exposed to flamenco music and then the North African music from Morocco. And I think that was the opening for me to really kind of think about composing in a way that merged those two worlds, and starting listening to Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, the Pat Metheny Group, other artists from around the world. It was a slow kind of process of kind of falling in love with Brazilian music once I moved to Chicago, because there was a big Brazilian scene, traveling to Brazil a number of times to kind of just be there and immerse the sounds and learn about those musical styles. And it continued from there. And I've really always just been interested in kind of blending those textures, those melodies between jazz and world music. And I think there's a lot of things that are complementary between those two different worlds. That's why they work well together.
Absolutely. So did you go to school for music?
Yeah, I studied underneath Brian Torff, bass player for George Shearing, Marion McPartland, had a stint with Frank Sinatra, and many other of the kind of jazz giants. His teacher was Milt Hinton, right? So, in the lineage of bass players, I felt Brian I was just so fortunate to be able to hook up with him. And I studied at Fairfield University. So he was starting the jazz program when I was just starting out. So it was really fortuitous. And he would bring artists in to perform with us, like Bernard Purdy, Randy Brecker, Paul Wertico, and all these other incredible artists. So it was really great formative years.
Oh, that's incredible. A little bit about your experience with Upright. How did you come into being a doubler?
Yeah, I think it was just by the time that I moved to Chicago in 1998, I was in the jazz scene, and you had to play upright. And I started studying with Greg Sarche of the Lyric Opera in Chicago, and then just started doubling, between upright and electric. And I think over the years, as I started coming up with my compositional identity a little bit more through my recordings, I just found like it was nice to cover on both have a different role. So
absolutely. So did you start an electric or did you start an upright?
I started on electric bass and then went to upright. So basically, doubling between the two. And most recently, I got the U bass, which you see behind me. So that's a whole different world as well. So
about this new album that you have coming out, this new work. So you're composing this material for quite a while right now. How long have you been working on that?
Basically, the Just Play project, for a little bit of context, I started in 2013. And after living in New York City for 7 years, performing with my band at the Blue Note, Smalls, Iridium, I realized that there was something lacking in the music scene in New York, and specifically more cross pollination and collaboration between cliques of the music scenes. You have the flamenco scene, you have the Indian music scene, you've got the straight ahead jazz scene, you've got the funk scene, and the singer songwriter scene. So, what I did was create a project called 21, and over the course of 21 days created 21 brand new bands, picking and choosing different artists from these different scenes, putting them together and improvising a composition. Just play in the moment. We filmed it every day and released a video for 21 days with over 40 artists.
Wow.
And creating original compositions. And we took that on the road, to that concept, to New Orleans, to San Juan, and to Cuba. And in Cuba, we recorded with 100 artists, and that was also over 21 days. We continued the series to Peru with a focus on bringing visibility to 10 Afro-Peruvian female artists. We brought them into the studio for the first time in history together. We produced that album and released that as the Warrior Women of Afro-Peruvian Music. And the series, you could see, kind of evolved, but the main thread is that we're giving a platform for the visibility of artists and voices that are not heard enough. And so that was a pretty meaningful project, and was just nominated for a Latin Grammy. And for me, that's really what moves me, is to be able to use music to change the visibility, because these artists, of these incredible artists, Rosa Guzman, Charo Goeneche, Sofia Buitron, Araceli Poma, Cata Robles, artists who always have been kind of in the shadows because it's a very male chauvinistic society. We put them, in the spotlight. And that's the series that we're continuing here in Puerto Rico. And so the compositions that we did in Peru are all traditional Afro-Peruvian songs. The series before that, there are more improvised collaborations. Here, I have a couple compositions that we're doing with artists here, and the theme is reset. So we all know that we're in this kind of trying time, but of the pandemic. But the reason that we're here in Puerto Rico is that we're looking for inspiration from the artists from Puerto Rico, from these powerful female singers and percussionists who have, in this country, had to deal with so many challenges, from Hurricane Maria to political upheaval to earthquakes. Like if there's any culture, if there's any people that know how to survive a pandemic and use art as a means to find yourself and reinvent yourself, it is these artists from Puerto Rico. And that's where we're going deep here. Documentary called Reset, because all the world right now is looking for inspiration and answers on how they personally can reset and come out of this pandemic stronger people with renewed clarity.
So you must find recording in this time must be difficult then, because getting enough space and enough working together in a closed environment has to be a bit of a struggle, right? Because I was thinking about that with videography. I have a couple of friends who are videographers, and it's really hard. So how do you work within that premise of being able to keep people safe, but also get them together?
It has been of the utmost concern on how we do this project in a safe way. So it really depends. We do a lot of the collaborations outside or in very large spaces. In Old San Juan, there's a very large space called El Bastellón, where we recorded, and we had all the social distancing protocol in place, and we filmed there for an entire day, and like we're very careful about the sequence of artists coming in. But I would say we're just really mindful of that and film outside. And I think that's something that you could do here, where it's warmer
Yeah,
more
yeah, I
easily.
can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine that does fix a lot of the issues. I mean, up in the Northeast, and that's why we're dealing with some spotty. The video's kind of stalling a little bit, but I think we're doing okay. Our systems are a little taxed, so and here it's hard because if we do work together, it is a tight environment, so you have to work within that and figure out safe ways. So being in a place where it's warmer and having the outdoor environment probably does help quite a bit, at least for organizing.
Yeah, I think it's part of the conversation and the solution, and also, of course, studio work is something that we're doing here and producing the final kind of music video that's going to be embedded, and that's inside in the studio.
That's awesome. I love that. I know that your music is on Apple Music, and you have a quite a large catalog on there, which is excellent because if anybody's looking for your music and wants to discover what you've been up to up until this point and kind of build that story of who you are through your music, I know there's a lot of albums available and they can really dive into it. Because as I was paging through, I could see that it goes all the way back to 2002, and you have Two for the Road, starting back in the beginning. Was there something prior to that?
Started with Two for the Road, and that was recorded in Chicago. Mosaic was recorded in Chicago. East Third was a single. Siesta 6 was a compilation that I was featured on with the singer Ana Maria Jopek. Passport was recorded in Brazil and in New York. And Departures, featuring Gil Goldstein, Jonathan Kreisberg, Ana Maria Jopek, was recorded in New York, and that is one to check out. Then Trade Winds Cuba is the project and double album that we did in Cuba with over 100 artists over the course of 21 days.
This one right here, right?
Yes. And so that's with Zay Luis, who was my partner on that project, a saxophonist and producer. And the most recent is the Warrior Women of Afro-Peruvian Music. As I stated, that got some buzz in the Latin Grammy world. And that project recorded in Lima, but then brought the tracks back to New York and Chicago and invited Howard Levy from the Lectones to record on that. So you'll hear him, Bill Goldstein on accordion, and a number of other great artists. The great drummer Yayo Serca, who plays with Angelique Kidjo. So that's the quick panorama of the albums that are available and on iTunes under Matt Geraghty Project, and then those other names, Warrior Women of Afro-Peruvian Music and Trade Winds Cuba, all of which are you can see on mattgeraghty.com.
I know you're on Instagram too. We can follow you on there and get kind of a insight on what you're doing day to day as well and how your music's coming along, because you do post quite a bit of information to stay up to speed with what's going on, right?
Yes, Geraghty_bass, and we're going to be sharing a lot of new content from our travels here in Puerto Rico and beyond in the next several years. The series is going to continue to Colombia, to Brazil, and then to the west coast of Africa. And that, follow all of our updates in our documentary music series at Geraghty_bass, and then also Just Play Global. That is the overarching series at Just Play Global on Instagram. And you're going to be totally in the loop on this series, which to date has 300 artists featured in it, all collaborations with videos that you can watch on YouTube, including the Warrior Women of Afro-Peruvian Music, which was a 10-part documentary series. You have to check these incredible singers out. If you don't know anything about Afro-Peruvian music, I mean, David Byrne was the first one to kind of get into Peru and put in the spotlight through his collaborations with Susana Baca. But it's a incredibly rich culture, and so you could get all that content also on our YouTube channel, but then also just follow us because there's more incredible collaborations coming up.
That's incredible. I love it. I love what you're doing. Now, just to make a little left turn here, because Bass Musician Magazine, can you tell me a little bit about your jazz bass, man? You know, I always see those photos of that jazz bass. What is the story behind that? Because it looks like it's lived a bit. So, what is that? What is the year on that? It looks very cool.
Yes, well, thanks. It is a late '60s Fender jazz bass, and what can I tell you about it? It's been my main axe since the early '90s, and maybe, you know, once you find a bass that you identify with that sound and it becomes your own, you tend to be content with that. And so really since then, I haven't, aside from my upright bass, which is a German bass from the 60s, those have been my main two instruments since then, and they've worked in so many different situations. It's just, you feel like it's especially the Fender jazz bass, it's like just been my go-to axe all the time. So I just really feel fortunate. It was right when I was kind of starting out to study seriously, and I found it in the East Coast Music Mall in Danbury, Connecticut. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the model that I want. But so that's a little bit of the background. But
I knew there was a story there somewhere, because I always see you post it on Instagram. And I was like, and I know you had it with you last year. I think you went to the Phil Jones, maybe 2 years ago. You were at the Phil Jones solo bass competition, and yes. I think you were there with that bass as well, because Phil's a good friend of mine, Phil and Michael Bronda.
Those guys are fabulous, and they do incredible work. And I have the briefcase, and I'm a huge fan of it. I've traveled around the world with that amp, and it's served me in so many different situations. It's just fantastic.
Very cool. Well, Matt, it was really great to touch base with you. I know you have a lot of work going on, and the day is just starting for you. And I really want to thank you for taking your time out today to touch base with me and Bass Musician Magazine and our readers. And you know, we're going to be checking in on you and see, and can't wait for this experience to be released.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, it's really a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for hosting this chat and amazing work that you're doing, and I can't wait to connect soon again, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about my humble little projects, and wishing you all the best, man.
Well, thank you, and we'll have to touch base again once the project's out for a little bit and see how that all came together and talk a little bit more about it. That's cool with you?
Great. Yeah, fantastic. And for everyone that's again curious of checking out all of the work that we've done, especially with the focus on the women from Peru, just hop on and the Warrior Women of Afro-Peruvian Music. Incredible artists, collaborations, incredible singers from Lima, and it's a rich treasure trove of Afro-Peruvian music. So again, Steve, thanks so much, man.
Well, thank you, and we'll talk soon.